Nobody has any idea what a 12-team playoff is going to look like. Not even Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, who formed their own little union to fix college athletics. Layman's terms, they have the best product, they bring in the most revenue, they want the most representation. Maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't. But recently I was watching Into the Spider-Verse, and they were talking about a CANON event. One major outcome that creates a ripple effect and changes the universe for the better or for the worse. And in my opinion, I started thinking, who are the what-if teams in college football for 2024? Like, if one thing goes their way, are they actually going to be in the hunt to make it to a 12-team playoff? I got 8 rosters, and every single one of these programs actually has a shot of finding their way into the dozen dance. Let's go ahead and discuss, but if you are new here, welcome on into the channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me who is your what-if team in 2024. Hit the ring notification. That way you keep up with everything that we're doing here on Just Saying It. Follow me on social media, Twitter, X, Instagram, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Slide in the DMs. That way we can have conversations about college football well past YouTube. Continue to tell everybody about this channel, your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, your best of pros, the drunk dude passed out in a Waffle House parking lot, college football aficionados, and just fans of the sport in general, because we're on the race to become the #1 YouTube show talking college football daily. So the what-if teams, they just need one thing to happen for them. Maybe it's roster cohesion. Maybe it's one player breaking out. Maybe it's just building off of last season. But if everything goes according to plan, it's very hard to say that they're not going to at least be in the conversation come late November, early December. Syracuse? They just fired their head coach. Dino Babers was just shown the door. They brought in Fran Brown, of all people. Yeah, they brought in Fran Brown. You know what else they brought in? Elite players in the transfer portal. And one of the best recruiters in the entire Southeastern Conference, Elijah Robinson. He's the new defensive coordinator. They brought over a guy in Fidel Diggs, who has experience playing in the SEC. They brought over Kyle McCord, Ohio State quarterback. Definitely an upgrade of what you had last season. And I look at this team as a whole. What moves were made? Good enough to say 9-3 is possible. Maybe 10-2. But Cole, how can you say that 9-3 and 10-2 is possible? Well, everyone has experience that's coming on over. Some defensive players actually understand the style of defense that Elijah Robinson wants to run. You feel confident in the quarterback play, plus what you're returning in talent. Over 65% of the roster is back. I look at the schedule. Do you see their schedule this year? Like, Fran Brown, basically, it's Jeff Brom 2.0. So last season, Louisville got lucky because they brought in a ton of names via the portal. They got some veteran experience at key positions, and they didn't really have to face off against any rigorous competition. So they guided their way to a 10-2 finish, and they made it to Charlotte. You look at their schedule this year: Ohio, Georgia Tech, Stanford, Holy Cross, UNLV to start the year before they play NC State. They don't have games against UNC. They don't have games against Miami. They don't have games against Clemson. They don't have games against Florida State. So if you just look at their non-conference schedule, they should be 4-0. You look at them playing Georgia Tech, they should at least give them a quality competition and probably walk out the other side unscathed. And if you're talking about Kyle McCord, nobody is saying that he has to be an elite game manager, but just imagine for a second. You're not having the same quarterbacks of last year return. Yeah, Cam Ward's coming on in and DJU's coming on in. Do you trust both of them underneath Miami and Florida State? Do you trust the new quarterback in place of Drake May at Chapel Hill, whether it be Max Johnson, whether it be somebody else? Do you trust a guy in Grayson McCall in Raleigh, North Carolina underneath Robert and I? Do you feel confident? Because right now, I look at the entire roster. I look at the entire team. Very hard-pressed to say that Kyle McCord just can't be a solid quarterback that guides you week in and week out to another win. Close out the season with games against Boston College, Cal, UConn. Oh, Miami is on the schedule. My apologies. If you win against Miami, well, now we're talking about maybe 10-2. 10-2 gets you to Charlotte. Charlotte, once again, you win the ACC. Automatic bye. More than likely an automatic bye because of your Power 4 conference. So I'm not counting out a team at all like Syracuse. They are built. They have new talent. And maybe this is, again, just the exact same 2.0 of what we saw with Rutgers. I mean, with Louisville last season. Spoiler alert, I gave away the next team. Rutgers, my friends, look at their schedule. Just do me a favor. For starters, who would not want to see Greg Schiano after all the work and the labor and all the tenacity that he's put into the program in Piscataway? Who would not want to see a playoff game hosted in the state of New Jersey? I know I would. I know my mom would because she went to Rutgers. But you look at their schedule. Howard, Akron, Virginia Tech to start the year. You get Washington, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA. Your biggest test is on the road against USC and on the road against Maryland. You don't play Penn State. You don't play Michigan. You don't play Ohio State. You don't play Oregon. You brought in a brand new quarterback to at least give you competition underneath Gavin Wimsatt. Wimsatt, in my opinion, actually was pretty decent last year. I like the returning talent defensively. I like what they bring at wide receiver this year. I feel like that this is a season where Rutgers, we're not going to be talking about them probably making the CFP. When you look at the level of talent, and you look at the strength of schedules for other opponents, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, probably you even got to throw Nebraska and Wisconsin into the conversation. But let's just say that they are able to get one or two upsets. Let's just say they beat USC on the road in Los Angeles. Let's just say they beat Wisconsin at home. And let's just say they find a way to march into Blacksburg, a non-conference game, and take down Virginia Tech. Well, now we're talking about this team maybe being 9-3. And 9-3, it's still a Big Ten roster. You don't think Tony Petitti is going to be going to battle for every team in the Big Ten? Even the lackluster ones, the ones that give you no hope. I mean, everyone was fighting a few years ago for Iowa to be a top 5 team. Nobody believed Iowa was a top 5 team, but their defense was sound and they did their job and they played a good schedule. So it's hard to say that Rutgers, with what they're returning, with what they could be, and with the schedule, at least not a conversation to be in the 12-team playoff. Not saying it's going to happen at all, but would you be shocked with this schedule that they don't finish 10-2, that they aren't at least in the conversation as a top 15 roster? Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. SMU, newcomers. Yes, SMU is a team that you want to be paying attention to. Maybe not this year, but definitely down the line, because SMU, for those, ladies and gentlemen, that don't understand the great state of Texas, is a private institution. Right now, there is no regulation against NIL. There is no regulation against the transfer portal. They went in and they added in some dudes this offseason. One of the biggest names was Deuce Harmon, a cornerback from Texas A&M. They brought over 2 wide receivers, 3 offensive linemen, a couple of defensive players, and they got a coach. They got a guy. And now that it's a Power 4 job, Rhett Lashley can pick and choose where he wants to go. If he doesn't feel comfortable getting an offer from, say, Washington State, doesn't have to take it. He doesn't feel comfortable getting an offer from Minnesota, doesn't have to take it, because he's in a good conference with a lot of backing from funding from the boosters. They're going to feast in the NIL era. This is a team that you want to be paying attention to. Remember Clemson a few years ago when they started going on their runs because of consistency on the recruiting trail, 5-star talents at wide receiver? That could be SMU in a new era of college football. We talk about Ole Miss. We talk about Missouri. You got to include SMU in that conversation. You look at their schedule, Houston Christian, BYU, TCU to begin the year. Little bit of a trap between 3 games. Florida State, Louisville, back-to-back weeks, 1 at home, 1 away. Then you come back on the 26th and you play Duke. Close out the year with Cal, Virginia, Boston College. You don't play Clemson. You don't play North Carolina. You don't play Miami. Who's saying 9-3 is not possible? Who's saying 10-2 is not possible? You got a veteran quarterback in Preston Stone. You like what you have in terms of returning talent on the defensive side of the football. Your coach knows how to run an offense to a T. And you just won the American Athletic Conference by beating Tulane. Tulane is no slouch of a program, people. This was run by one of the best coaches in college football, Willie Fritz. They could be competitive from the jump in the ACC. And they start off really strong. Wins against BYU, TCU, Florida State, Houston Christian. They're 4-0. What happens as long as they don't hit a lull? What if they just don't hit a lull at any point during the regular season? We're talking about a roster that absolutely can at least be 9-3, 10-2. 9-3 might get you to Charlotte. And if it gets you to Charlotte, it doesn't take you out of the conversation at all for a 12-team playoff. That's the problem with the 12-team playoff, is that you have to give automatic bids, 1 to even a roster that doesn't deserve it. SMU is one of those teams that probably wouldn't deserve it at 9-3, but they won the ACC. So how can you blame them? Tulane, team I just mentioned. Tulane's going to get in the playoff because of one group of 5 school has to. Maybe it's not Tulane. Maybe it's UTSA. Maybe it's Boise State. Maybe it's San Diego State. But one group of 5 school is going to get in. I bet Tulane. Why? They're the best group of 5 coach in college football. They have a top 25 coach in college football, in my opinion. That's John Summerall. You don't know the name? You better learn it soon, because much like Rhett Lashley, he can pick and choose where he wants to go. He's in a program that now has a belief that they can be a legit threat in a college football playoff because they beat USC 2 years ago in the Cotton Bowl, and they just had a coach stick with the program when he had offers to go to Georgia Tech. Willie Fritz took over this team, turned them around, and John Summerall is going to benefit from the fruits of the labor. He crushed the transfer portal. I don't know if you've seen how many former 3-star, 4-star, Power 4 level players are coming on over. Get a guy from Alabama, you get Ty Thompson from Oregon. You're in a really good spot to replace the production lost this offseason in New Orleans. And you look at their schedule, you need to win one of these 2 games. Kansas State, Oklahoma. You win one of those 2 games, plus with what you realize you have returning. You don't even know the AAC schedule yet, so we don't know when their bye weeks are. We don't know when they're going to be taking on other teams. You get that, guys, we're talking about 11-1. We're talking about 10-2. I mean, we're talking about 12-0. You get both those wins over 2 teams with young quarterbacks that are supposed to be fixtures of the game by the end of the season. You get wins early. You attack them early in the season. And one of those games is actually at home. That's a huge win for Tulane, in my opinion. You're going to be in the dance. You 100% are going to be in the dance. I don't think that there is a better coach team in the group of 5 than Tulane. I don't think that there is a better roster in the group of 5 than Tulane. And I don't think that there is a more easier moment for you to sell yourself to the college football playoff committee than a game against Kansas State, a Big 12 favorite, and the game against Oklahoma, a newcomer in the SEC that is ready to go ahead and strut their stuff. Texas A&M. Yes, I know. I crap on Texas A&M all the time. Everyone thinks that I'm a Texas A&M hater. I'm not. In fact, I'm the furthest thing from it. I love the fact that they hired Mike Elko. I am very disappointed with A&M fans out there saying, well, we didn't really need Mark Stoops. No, you got an upgrade over Mike Elko, but Mark Stoops would have been fine. Mark Stoops would have been great for your program simply because if you look at what he's done in Lexington. But bygones be bygones. How soon does his roster mesh? That's my what if for A&M. They have 24 new transfers coming on in, including several on the offensive line, a slew of players defensively, guys like Nick Scourton from Purdue, guys like Scooby Williams, Florida, guys like Des Ricks, former 5-star talent from Alabama, now going to be playing the boundary corner. You still have a roster filled with 4-star and 5-star talent. You guys forget, Texas A&M, 2 years back-to-back before getting the #1 recruiting class, had top 10 rosters. They were riddled with talent. And you know that you're going to get good play from Mike Elko. Mike Elko's done more with less everywhere he's been, whether it be at Wake Forest, whether it be at Bowling Green, whether it be at Notre Dame, whether it be at A&M. He's done more with less. The defense was the reason A&M was potent for 2 years underneath Jimbo Fisher. And then he goes to Durham and he gets exceptional play from the Blue Devils, wins ACC Coach of the Year. Players play for guys. Players love playing for rigorous coaches. That's what you have with a guy in Mike Elko. And as soon as this roster starts to bleed one mind, one sound, one body, they're going to terrorize people. This is not an easy schedule, but it's not a hard schedule. They're right damn smack in the middle. Every game, in my opinion, outside of a few, what I would say maybe Texas right now, and even then I would probably say that that's a toss-up. Notre Dame, depending on what Riley Leonard looks like, that's potentially a toss-up. Every game's a toss-up. Every single one. So you don't feel like if you are A&M, you're out down and out of the count. You could easily hit the 8.5 win total. And what if, just what if, everything meshes at the right time? We talking about this team maybe going 11-1, finding their way to Atlanta. Would it shock you as a college football fan to see a healthy Connor Wegman behind a stable offensive line? Thank God Steve Adazio no longer is near those players. Adam Cushing might be a better upgrade. What if the offensive line holds block long enough for Wegman to connect with Moose Muhammad, with maybe a Jabari Barber, who comes on over from Troy? What if he builds a relationship with a Micah Tease really early on at camp? We talking about a 5,000-yard season? Wouldn't shock me. A&M has the talent. It's all about building at the right time. How quickly does this roster mesh together? Next up, Colorado. Hate to do it to you, folks. I'm not hyping up Colorado. What I am saying is that you cannot count them out. Deion does things different. And until proven otherwise, you can't really argue with the results. Last year, completely rebuilt a roster overnight, got to 4 wins. And those who want to overhype Colorado, just remember, we predicted 4 wins. Most people predicted 4 wins. So unless you have to go to the big 4-letter company that loves to go ahead and talk about Deion, nobody is overhyping Colorado. Here's the thing. They brought in more transfers. They brought in 6 offensive linemen, including a 5-star in Jordan Seaton. That's basically going out there and adding in, 3 offensive linemen in itself. That's a plug-and-play mold of clay that you get to mesh into your own image. They also brought over Will Shepherd from Vanderbilt. I don't think many people know who Will Shepherd is. One of the most consistent wide receivers the last 3 years in the SEC. And you give him Shadur Sanders. Plus, you have Travis Hunter. Plus, you have Dylan Edwards. Plus, you have another bunch of talent that is still available at your disposal that could eventually end up being household names in the Big 12. Big 12, they do not have an easy schedule in the slightest. They have back-to-back road games at one point. They have back-to-back matchups against potential top 25 teams. They're in a world of hurt. But let's just say the offensive line holds a block. Let's just say it's the same offense that last year was able to score 40 plus on Nebraska, 40 plus on TCU, 40 plus against USC. What if they're able to do all that? Well, I would at least say 8-4 is a possibility. Maybe 9-3 is a possibility. What if the Big 12 is so middle tier in all the other conferences where only one team is going to get into the big dance, but Colorado does enough to where they're facing off against, say, Utah in Arlington? So now we're on the possibility. Probably not. Probably it's at least a 7-5 record, but this offensive line continues to hold. You got a quarterback. You got a wide receiver. You got multiple playmakers on the defense side of the football. It's all about building in the trenches. How well does Trench play in 2024? Next up, Virginia Tech. They ended the year better than anybody else in college football. If you want to pick one team going into next season that you were sitting and saying, you know what, this is a roster that I can start buying a little bit of stock in, I think you have to go with Virginia Tech. They got games against Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers to begin the year. Yes, they have a matchup against Miami in week 5. They close out the year with a little bit of a trap. Syracuse, Clemson, Duke, Virginia. But this is the number one returning production in college football. They have a return rate of over 80%. That's number one in the sport. Kyron Jones, he's a dude. He can play quarterback. He can sling it. He's physical. He can run it up the middle. There's quarterback design plays that will allow him to utilize his legs inside the red zone. This is a team that I think with the right coach, and if Brent Pry is that right coach, I believe he is, they're at least going to be fighting for 9-3. They're at least going to be fighting for a spot in Charlotte. That trap at the very end of the schedule, very much a scary moment. But I do think that Virginia Tech, the way that they are returning as much talent and the way that they kind of hit their stride down in early November last year, close out the year 5-1, that's enough to give me optimism that they will at least be somewhat of a relevant team in 2024. Last one for you, and it's a big one. Clemson. Clemson's a what-if team. Because here's the what if. What if after you going out and making moves, trying to add in players via the portal, it's great that you at least tried, Dabo, and it didn't work. But Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik turn on the Jets and just hit Super Saiyan. What happens in that moment? Because there is a possibility. Cade Klubnik, one of the best quarterbacks in the 2022 cycle, one of the best quarterbacks that we have seen come out of Austin Westlake, a pipeline factory for college football. What if he actually hits? What if Garrett Riley needs an entire offseason to really build that relationship, understand the kinks, the flaws, the do's, the don'ts of what happened last year, and they end up doing everything that they aspire? What if in game 1 against Georgia, in a neutral site location, which isn't a neutral site location because it's in Atlanta, aka Athens 2.0, what if they just hold their own? What if they lose by 3? And then you start to realize, well, this offense, it's not that bad. You know, they brought back over 50% of the production. They still have a quarterback that was highly touted. The offensive play calling seems to be a lot more stable. What if the defense only allows 24 points per game and you average 28? What if you win close matchup after close matchup, but you're winning? Well, now Dabo has a reason to say the transfer portal, it works for some. It doesn't have to work for me. I do things my own way, and my way is still humming. My way is still doing a damn thing that I seem to be exceptional at. What if that happens? They got games to where they can lose. They have games that they can win. This could be a team that absolutely hits 10-2. This could be a team that goes 7-5. We have no idea. It's a what-if roster for Clemson in 2024. But here's the thing. What if everything does hit? You're really going to count out Dabo going to the playoff? You're really going to count out Dabo playing in Charlotte, a place that he has dominated the last few years whenever Clemson does reach the ACC title game? You're really going to believe that this is a team that can't find their way to 11-1? You're out of your mind. Come on. Stop it. Stop it. Go ahead. Reel it on it. Reel it on. Come on. We don't need the takes. We don't need the hot takes yet. It's still got time, okay? So I do believe that Dabo is right now facing a critical year. but he's going to buy himself some more time to where boosters have to get off his ass, where fans have to get off his keister, where Tyler from Spartanburg can call in and be frustrated, but he gets to one-up him every time. That's what's going to happen if Clemson decides to actually play their version of football, and it all comes together. There you have it. Those are my 8 teams that I am most interested in seeing this year. Syracuse is a what-if team. Rutgers a what-if team. SMU, Tulane, definitely what-if teams. What if things go their way? Veteran stability. Texas A&M, roster cohesion. You gel well? How quickly can this team build off of that success? Colorado, new offensive line, new number 2 wide receiver. What if everything starts to gel? How about a team like Virginia Tech? Can you build off last season? What if last year was a warning sign to everyone in the ACC? The Hokies are back. And Clemson, what if Clemson ends up just doing the same thing, and this is a year where you just need to take a step back to take 3 steps forward? Go in the comment section. Tell me below, who do you think is the biggest what-if team in 2024? Tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of pros, college football aficionados, everywhere about this channel. Continue to follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. Slide in the DMs. I love doing videos talking about college football, and I love doing videos that have questions from you. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, see you later, folks.